Hello, this is Alum here coming in for another video. This is about Milestone 3, a bit of tips and tricks and some information that I think would be beneficial to many people. So all these topics are timestamped, so you can adjust that as needed. The topics are as follows. So how to set key bindings. I've had multiple people ask me how to set them and whether or not they could use a gamepad, and you definitely can. Next is how Safespots work. So if you're being attacked and you don't think you're going to survive, this is a way that you can get out of danger. The weapon stats, so you know which weapons to use and what sort of scenarios. How to effectively kite mobs to reduce damage, and that includes a video, and you can significantly reduce the damage you take by kiting. All the drop rates for all the mobs with percentages, so you know what to kill and when for what items. The mobs' damage and their health, and this has all been calculated out. Health regeneration and degeneration, so all the different things that can affect your health and make it go up or down. Looting, which seems to be a common thing that I'm questioned about and how it actually works. Most people don't know how looting works in detail, so this goes into it in detail. Energy regeneration and degeneration, similar to the health regen and degen, and again goes into detail on all the things that affect energy. And then some final thoughts as to the current build up to this point in time. So we'll start off with setting up some key bindings. So the very first thing you do is on Windows and the taskbar, just clicking in the search and typing in Notepad. You might have Notepad in your recent folder. If not, you can search for it and it'll pop up. Once you see Notepad listed there, you need to right click it and then left click Run as Administrator. Doing this will allow you to adjust your keybindings.txt file in a bit, and without running it as administrator, the effects won't properly save. So this is an absolute requirement to go via this method. Next up, once you have Notepad open, you need to actually find the file that you want to modify. And the file path for that is your hard drive, whatever that happens to be, in my case C drive, and the default directory where this file is saved is program files x86, Gala Games, Mirandus data, streaming assets, design data, and finally the file keybindings.txt. And once you open up, you'll see a long list of all the different key bindings for both mouse keyboard combination and gamepad. And if you want to know which potential keys you can bind, you can scroll to the bottom of the document and every key bind is listed there. Now, when you replace the key binds, you need to keep it in the exact same format. So if you're looking at this, you can see, say, player control forward. It says /keyboard/W:1. So if you wanted to change that to, say, the letter I, you would go keyboard/I:1. And you need to keep all those mapping formats the same. Now, if you want to change things to your mouse, you follow a similar pattern as listed below. So for myself personally, I have my forward mouse button, my backward mouse button, my middle mouse button, my scroll wheel, my right mouse, and my left mouse all bound, plus all of the other relevant keys such as interact, jump, sprint, all my different weapon adjustments. So you can essentially have everything that you're regularly using to bound with. Now, if you do enjoy playing with the controller, the Xbox controller does work fine. I don't personally run a controller, but I know people who are using it, and you adjust the keys and key bindings in the same way that you would with both mouse and keyboard. Now in this video here, we're showing how Safespots work. So a goblin's attacking me, and I jump up onto the top of a roof there, at which point he de-aggros. Then to confirm other safe spots, I re-aggro him, at which point he is now coming after me again. And I back off to not just on top of structures, but even within certain structures, like the cemetery. If you climb up on it, you see he's aggroed onto me, and then suddenly he de-aggros and then wanders off. Now, the next thing of importance is weapon stats, and I have highlighted in yellow the most significant stat of each type of stat. So the biggest thing here is the spear attacks twice as fast as all the other weapons, which doesn't really make sense. Like, the dagger attacks the same speed as a hammer, which is completely illogical. The sword does have the top minimum damage, and the hammer does have the top high-end damage, which does have some benefits. The sword is helpful for determining mob health later on, and we'll go into that. And the hammer has just enough damage to kill bucks in one hit. But that's a very unique and almost irrelevant use case. The main thing is that the spear, it attacks so fast that its bottom end DPS is similar to most weapons' top end DPS, and its top end DPS is almost twice as much the next weapon's top DPS. Overall, its average DPS is exactly twice as much as every other weapon, and on top of that, not alone does it have twice the DPS of every other weapon, but it also has the longest range of any other weapon. So you can more effectively kite mobs, which means that you can kill them faster, which means you take less damage. It doesn't just increase your damage output, but it also improves your survivability. Kind of the old saying, the best defense is a strong offense. Now in this video we're showing how kiting works. So you see I have the spear out and it's attacking quickly. Now you want to be constantly attacking with the spear, even if it doesn't seem like you're attacking anything. And you want to keep kiting around in circles and backwards. And the reason for that is that the mobs will mostly miss you like this. As you see, it interferes with their targeting. And also, you only ever need to be hitting one mob because there's no AoE attacks. So you always want to stay at range. Now this is me not moving at all, just to show that not kiting does a lot more damage to you. Next up we have mob drop raids. Now this is something that many people are very interested in, and as we can see here, looted exactly 100 of each of the mobs with the exception of the wisp and the alpha buck. And the reason why I didn't loot the alpha buck multiple times is because I've yet to actually personally see the alpha buck, which is ridiculous considering how much I played, and the wisp for the last several days has been stuck in a rock in the northwest corner of the zone, so I couldn't kill him, period. But I can tell you that the wisp, from what I've seen, drops anywhere from 200 to about 1,000 materium and averages about 600. The alpha buck, from what I've heard, has dropped 300 materium each time. The goblin hunter and archer are very consistent with about 14 materium on average, and that comes in either 5 or 25 materium quantities. In terms of the best items, so rabbit for sinew, so if you're trying to get the bow, the rabbit is the fastest way to build up your sinew. The first 4 mobs, rabbit, doe, wolf, and buck, all drop crude meat with 100% drop chance, so every single kill will drop a raw crude meat. The raw tough meat and the raw solid meat are far less interesting. The crude hide can drop from the doe, the buck, and the wolf, which is consistent with the same amount as the wolf. The tough hide, however, the wolf drops and is the only mob that drops that. Now, the fact that the buck and the wolf drop crude hide at the same amount, that means that as long as you're able to survive killing wolves, then you should always prioritize killing a wolf over a buck, because you're going to get crude hides at the same rate, plus you're going to get tough hides, plus you're going to get the lesser essence of slash. Now, the 3 different types of lesser essences come from wolf, goblin hunter, and goblin archer, and they all have the same drop rate. It may not seem like that when you're actually playing, but when actually calculating it out, yes, the drop rates are the same, at least after killing 100 mobs, which should be a large enough sample size to get a fairly accurate drop rate. Next up we have mob damage and health. So this was calculated via a few different methods. So first off, you can't see the mob's health, and the game files no longer show what the mob's health is. That's all been encrypted. The only thing that you can do is use different weapons, and the weapons all have different damage ranges. For example, let's say a mob has 10 health and your weapon has a top end damage damage of 9, then you know that you'll never kill that mob in one hit. However, if a weapon has a top end damage of 10, there's a chance every once in a while you will kill that mob in one hit. So using a combination of different weapons and adding up their minimum maximum damages, you can narrow in on how much hit points a mob has. So for example, there you see Doe and Buck. The sword won't kill a Doe or a Buck in one hit. Now you're probably thinking, well, I killed a Doe and Buck in one hit. No, you didn't. What actually happened was some other person hit that mob at some point in time and you just did additional damage to it. If you watch them actually spawn in an area with no mobs around, you'll never kill them with one hit with the sword, but you will kill them with one hit with the hammer. Now the mobs that drop materium are different because the amount of materium drop is a percentage of the damage that you did to them. So if you do one hit to the mob, say with a 6 to 8 damage weapon, there's 3 different amounts of materium you could drop as long as the other person kills that mob completely. So by doing this and multiplying by the percentage of materium you get dropped, you can then calculate the amount of hit points they have. And as we see here, the Goblin Hunter has twice the hit points of the Goblin Archer. However, the Goblin Archer does 6 more base damage, which doesn't seem like that much more than 50 damage. However, when you add in plate mail, it works out that the Goblin Archer actually does more than twice the damage as the Goblin Hunter, which means that the Goblin Archer has 4 times the kill priority over the Goblin Hunter, meaning you should either A, always kill the Goblin Archer first, or kite the Goblin Hunters far enough away that you're not in the range of the hunters. Next up we have health, regeneration, and degeneration. So there's 3 different ways you can regenerate health. First off, you have the bandage, which is probably the most common way to be regenerating health. And it's set at 40 health over 5 seconds with a 5-second cooldown. So you can essentially always be ticking health as long as you have bandages. Now I know getting cotton can be a little tough at times, so you may not have an endless supply of bandages, but that is your best way to recover health. And it doesn't restore health at a consistent rate. So it first off gives you a tick of 10 health, and then 5 health, and then 10 health, and then your last tick is a 15 health. So it's very inconsistent. Gives you a little boost at the start and a little towards the end. Now the 40 health is a fixed amount, it's not percentage based. So whether or not you're wearing a Vox will not affect the amount of health that the bandage restores. Now the temple, on the other hand, will be affected by your Vox because that's a percentage of total health. However, there's really no good reason why you should ever restore your health at a temple because the cost is far too high. The only time I can see this being worthwhile is if you potentially resurrected and wanted to get full health on resurrection but forgot to hit the instant resurrection, at which point then it might be worthwhile restoring your health at the temple. Although honestly it's probably better to just use the unstuck button, kill yourself again, and then res instantly for cheaper. Now the cemetery, early on and late in the game, your cemetery is a very effective way to restore your health, and later on you can restore your stamina this way. Really early on you probably don't have materium because the first materium comes from either the alpha buck, which is quite rare, or from goblins. What you can do is instead, if you're below 50% health, you can just get yourself killed and then take the free res, at which time you have at least half your health when you resurrect. Also, late in the game, if you're low on bandages and you want to heal yourself up, you can just simply kill yourself off and then use the 30 materium res to resurrect yourself with full health. This is even more effective when you have a Vox because the cemetery resurrection heals based on your percentage of health, whereas the bandage only heals a fixed 40 health. So a bandage, you need 4 bandage to fully heal yourself, whereas the cemetery, a single 30 materium can fully heal you. It works out if you can kill essentially 2 goblins without using the amount of health that is required for a bandage, it's better to use the cemetery method from a cost perspective. Next, we have another slide on health regeneration, this time looking at more to the degeneration side of things. So a Vox can give you between 10 and 30% extra health depending on the Vox and the exemplar you have it equipped on. So if you have an exemplar Vox and you have it equipped on the same exemplar, you'll get plus 30% health. If it's not equipped on the same exemplar, it doesn't give you anything. And you get a plus 10% health if you're using a special Vox. So something like a wolf or a hawk or a dragon or a minotaur or troll, etc. They give you 10% health on all exemplars regardless of whether there's any matching. And let's say you equip a Vox and you have 130% health. Let's say you heal yourself up to 130 health total because your base health is 100. Then you unequip your Vox, your health will drop down to 100 out of 130, assuming you unequip it and then re-equip it, of course. So you can decrease your health percentage by equipping and unequipping a Vox. Another way you can lose health is by running out of energy, at which point you'll lose 5 health every 5 seconds. So from full health to 0, you can survive 1 minute and 40 seconds, and with a Vox at full health to 0, you can last 2 minutes and 10 seconds. So if you find yourself caught without energy, you have 2 minutes and 10 seconds to heal yourself via some method before you die. Obviously, if you're taking damage from mobs, you can lose health, and you can't currently lose any health from fall damage. However, I suspect that will be changed at some point here in the future. In this video, what we're going to show you is how healing works. So I just used a bandage, and in the bottom middle you can see my hit points going up. So I started at 11, now it's at 51. I'll do it again so people can see. So 61, 66, 76, and 91. So like I said, 10, 5, 10, and then finally 15 hit points to heal. Now when it comes to looting, this is something that confuses many people, and there's 4 different stages of mob interaction after a mob dies. So stage 1 is when the mob dies, and only people that can loot it are people that did enough damage to meet whatever damage threshold was for that particular mob's looting, and that happens at time equals 0. The next, from time equals 0 to time 15, you start to see flies buzzing around, and at the 15-second mark those flies actually start to make an audible buzzing noise. And I found this hard to hear over my speakers, but with headphones on you can hear it fairly clearly. Stage 3 happens when it becomes a free-for-all. So if you're not qualified to loot an item, it'll be gray, but after 30 seconds after a mob's died, all items will become white, which means anyone can loot those items. And you don't need to usually close the loot inventory and reopen it, although sometimes when you go to loot something, it'll show the last mob's loot for some reason, so I often do close my loot and reopen it. That also means you can look around to your surroundings and make sure you're not getting attacked. The last stage, of course, is when the mob simply despawns, and it despawns at the 60-second mark or 1 minute, and it doesn't matter if the mob's been looted or not, they always despawn at the 1 minute mark. So now on to energy regeneration and degeneration. There's 3 different ways you can restore your energy, also called stamina in some builds. So the main way is consumables. So your flat bread and crude meat jerky give you 20%, tough meat gives you 30%, and the solid meat jerky gives you 40%. Now the flat bread is by far your best bet because in the current build you can harvest barley endlessly. It's an evergreen resource, so you can literally just farm hundreds of barley and convert them at a 1-to-1 ratio to make flat bread. The next way would be your cemetery, and your cemetery you automatically get at least 50% of your total energy bar, or 100% if you pay the 30 materium to resurrect instantly. However, there's very rare circumstance where it's better to die than to simply use the flat bread. The last one is the large tavern, and if barley was actually a somewhat scarce resource, this might be a reasonable way of doing so. 100% energy with only 3 barley, whereas it would take 5 barley to make 5 times 20% flatbread to fully restore your energy bars. So this is almost twice as efficient as using the flatbread method, but like I said, because barley is currently evergreen and infinitely harvestable, there's really no reason to go out of your way to eat a gruel instead of just more flatbread. Although at some point in time I suspect this will change, at which point the large taverns and or potentially inn would be your best bet. Now, how do you lose energy? By far your most significant way to lose energy is by sprinting, and you lose a ton of it. You lose 300 energy every single second while sprinting. And you start off with 50,000 energy, so you last 2 minutes and 47 seconds before you exhaust all of your energy. At which point you start taking health damage and you'll eventually die unless you restore it. Now the health damage will immediately stop as long as you have more than 0 energy. In the current build, there's absolutely no reason not to have your sprint activated all the time. And because of that, it's worthwhile to have it toggle so you don't have to continuously press the key all the time. And the best way of doing that is by activating sticky keys, which is a Windows feature, and typically you can activate sticky keys by pressing a button 5 times consecutively quickly, and you should get a dialog pop up saying would you like to activate sticky keys, in which case you can go through that and activate it. At that point you can simply press your sprint button to turn it on and press it again to turn it off, so you don't have to hold the button down. Now the next thing is dying. When you die, you essentially lose 100% of your remaining energy. However, upon rezzing, you get either half back or all of it back. So you only technically ever lose a maximum of 25,000 energy. So if you died with 50,000, you resurrect 25,000, you lost half. Interestingly enough, harvesting barley causes you to lose energy. So your biggest way of restoring energy is actually one of the only ways that you lose energy, in which case you lose energy at a rate of 20 per harvest. Now let's say your inventory was full and you didn't actually harvest that. At the end of your cast bar for harvesting, you still lose the 20 energy whether you got it or not. So I submitted that as a bug because I don't think it should work that way. That doesn't make any sense. And as per the norm, I'll finish off with some final thoughts. So this image is looking out over an outpost. This is in particular outpost number 1 just outside the Citadel, and we're facing the Wolf Cave. So the Citadel of the Sun is back to our left, which is so facing west here particularly. This current build seems to be shaping together fairly well. There were some issues with regards to goblins not spawning because the zone's materium count was filled, and because goblins spawned with materium, them, wisp, and the alpha buck were not spawning because the daily cap for that had expired. So that's been corrected. Also, the wisp, which was a little weak, has now been buffed significantly in terms of health. I don't know the exact amounts because, like I said, the wisp has been stuck in a wall for the last several days. But the one time I did see it, it was taking quite a beating, that's for sure. I've seen quite a few people playing, lots of new and some old faces, and overall people seem to be enjoying this build. I've been watching OpenSea fairly consistently, and we are seeing a general trend upwards in terms of NFTs. I've also seen more people on Discord joining in and gearing up. We have probably a dozen people on full plate mail and many on multiple different characters, so people are definitely enjoying this current build. I do think it would be worthwhile for the team to relatively soon add a potential boss or make a mob significantly more powerful, such that a group or potentially even a raid would be required to take it down. And I think they should be adding some earnings in some way, whether that be a special NFT similar to what you got with killing the golden rabbit, or whether they have actual real materium wards, whether that be in-game or airdropped later on. But the team does seem to be moving in the general right direction, and I may make one further video on this build just showing some group interactions and group content, although we'll see how things are going. And so until next time, goodbye.